In a small Nigerian village, there was a wise king named AMADI. One day, King AMADI wrote something important, put it in his pocket, and started getting ready for a journey. He put his sword in its case and kept a small knife with him for safety. Disguised as a simple traveler, the king left his palace. King AMADI wanted to travel alone, without any guards or ministers. He wanted to see what was happening in his village and the nearby ones, to understand the lives of his people better. So, he got on his horse and began his journey, not telling anyone, not even his closest advisors, where he was going. The king began his journey. The village he planned to visit was far away, and the road to get there passed through thick forests. It would take him 2 to 3 days to reach his destination. After traveling continuously for a whole day and night, the king began to feel tired and wanted to rest. A little further ahead, he spotted a small hut. He called out, "Is anyone here?" From the hut, an elderly blind woman emerged. She asked the traveler, "Who are you, and what brings you here at such a late hour?" The king hid his true identity and replied, "I am a traveler. I am tired from my journey and need a place to stay for the night. I am also hungry. If you can offer me something to eat and drink, I would be very grateful." The woman agreed to let him stay. The king tied his horse next to the hut and entered the small home with the blind old woman. The woman served the king food and water, and after eating, he thanked her. That night, the king noticed that the blind woman seemed confused and deeply worried. Curious, the king asked her what was troubling her. The old woman let out a long sigh and spoke softly. "Every year, at the festival, the most beautiful girl is given a challenge. If she cannot complete it, the chief of the village punishes her. This year, my daughter has been chosen, and the challenge is very dangerous." The king listened closely as the woman continued. "She must spend the whole night alone in the jungle. There are wild animals like lions and snakes that could harm her. She has no weapons to protect herself, only her courage. If she can survive the night, she will pass the test. But if she fails, the chief will punish her." The king felt sad for the girl. He knew this challenge was cruel and unfair, but he stayed quiet for the moment, thinking about how he might help. The king gently reassured the woman, "Don't worry. I will help your daughter. When she goes into the jungle, I will stay close by as her guard. I promise your daughter will pass this challenge." The next morning, as the sun rose, the nearby village was busy preparing for the festival. People from different villages started to gather, ready to celebrate and watch the challenge. The king, disguised as a simple traveler, quietly prepared himself to keep his promise and protect the girl during the dangerous night ahead. At the festival, the chief of the village stood before the crowd and announced the challenge. He called the girl forward, and with fear in her eyes, she stepped up, knowing what was ahead. The chief spoke loudly, "You must spend the night alone in the jungle where wild animals roam. If you survive until morning, you will pass the challenge." The girl trembled with fear, unsure how she could survive a whole night in such a dangerous place. But she had no choice. The crowd, curious and eager to watch, began helping her on her way, leading her to the base of a mountain where the jungle began. Unknown to the girl, King AMADI was already waiting deep inside the jungle. He had kept his promise to the old woman. Hidden from sight, the king was ready to protect the girl, but she had no idea he was there, watching over her in the shadows. As the girl reached the edge of the jungle, the villagers left her behind. She stood alone, staring into the dark trees, feeling very afraid. Her heart was beating fast, but she knew she had no choice. She took a deep breath and stepped into the jungle, the tall trees closing in around her. At first it was quiet, but as the night got darker, Strange sounds filled the air. She could hear animals, and the rustling of leaves made her shiver with fear. Every shadow made her feel like something was watching her. Far behind, King AMADI was silently following her, making sure she stayed safe. He moved carefully, always watching, but the girl did not know he was there. He had promised the old woman to protect her daughter, and he was ready for anything that might happen. Suddenly, the girl heard something nearby. She stopped, her heart pounding. Out of the shadows, a large lion appeared. Its eyes glowed in the dark, and the girl was frozen in fear. Just as the lion moved closer, King AMADI quietly stepped forward from behind the trees. He drew his sword and scared the lion away without making any noise. The lion ran off into the jungle, and the girl, still scared but not knowing what had happened, kept walking. Throughout the night, the king stayed near her, keeping all the wild animals away. Every time something dangerous came close, the king would silently protect her. The girl didn't know she was being watched over. By the time the sun started to rise, the girl had made it through the night safely. She was tired, but had survived the jungle. When she reached the village, the people cheered for her, amazed that she had passed the challenge. What they didn't know was that King AMADI had been by her side the whole time, keeping his promise to the old woman and saving her daughter without being seen. After the girl had completed the challenge and the villagers cheered for her, King AMADI stepped forward from the crowd. He no longer hid his identity. Everyone was surprised to see him, especially the chief of the village. King AMADI spoke firmly. "I am King AMADI, and I have been watching over this challenge. This is not a fair test. It is dangerous and cruel. If I had not been there to protect her, this young girl could have died alone in the dark jungle. No girl should face this kind of fear just because she is beautiful." The crowd fell silent. The chief of the village looked down, feeling ashamed. King AMADI continued, "I ask you to end this challenge forever. It is not a way to show strength or bravery. Instead, we should learn to protect and respect our daughters, not put them in danger. This is a lesson we must all learn." The villagers, hearing the wisdom in the king's words, bowed their heads in shame. The chief of the village agreed with King AMADI, and everyone in the village promised to never hold the challenge again. The people thanked King AMADI for his kindness and wisdom, and from that day forward, the village changed for the better. They learned to respect and protect their girls, and the dangerous tradition was never spoken of again.